Welcome to Commander Quickies, the series where we take a specific aspect of Commander and crunch it into a 5-minute easy-to-watch video. I'm BZ of the Nitpicking Nerds, and today we're going over how to build an EDH Manabase. Before we begin, if you're enjoying our content, just remember to like and subscribe, and you can check out our channel for other Commander content. Now, we aren't taking into account original duels for these outlines, as the vast majority of players can't afford them. So if you have them and you want to use them, just replace a combination of shock lands and rainbow lands pretty much as you see fit. Utility lands we're defining as any land you play for something other than what it initially taps for. So an example is Ancient Tomb is not a utility land, but Nykthos is, because you're not playing Nykthos to produce one colorless, you're playing it to take advantage of devotion. The biggest takeaway from looking at these Manabase outlines is that it's important to know the role your Manabase plays in relation to your deck type. As you decrease the amount of colors you play, the Manabase's ability to help you win the game increases. So starting with 5-color Manabases, your priorities with these Manabases are going to be fetch lands, and the lands they can fetch that have types, which are primarily going to be shock lands. Can't really afford to have lands enter tapped because you'll lose tempo, and you're already losing some tempo from playing 5 colors and forcing yourself to get all this fixing together. Fetch lands are basically rainbow lands because you can fetch any 2 colors with any 1 fetch land if your deck is 5 colors. You have between 0 and 3 slots for utility lands, but the deck's power most likely lies in its spells over its mana base. Your best lands are lands that are just rainbow all the time, that may deal damage to you, but you need this reliability over raw power on lands. A typical 5-color, non-budget mana base made by the Nitpicking Nerds would look like this. Here are some budget options you can consider. Pain lands can replace fetch lands, and the cycle lands from Amonkhet can replace your shock lands. The slow fetch cycle, like grasslands, can replace your Zendikar fetches, but a strong mana base in a 5-color deck is critical to your success, so you might find yourself winning less games or stumbling more because your lands are entering tapped or you can't find the right colors. Now let's move on to 4-color mana bases, which are pretty similar to 5-color mana bases. Fetches are still one of your highest priorities. You have slightly more room for utility lands. You get about 1 to 5 slots. If you have partners and one of your 4 colors is a splash, like Thrasios Tymna, you can lean more towards the 5 slot. You can't dilute the deck too much though, even though it's tempting. You lose percentage points with too many colorless lands. Ancient Tomb is one of the only colorless lands I consider for a deck like this. It depends on the commander. Typical 4-color non-budget mana base for us would look something like this. For budget alternatives, you have Pain lands that are still good, your Battle Bond duels are also going to be good, and your tapped tri-lands become better, slower options in a 4-color deck compared to 5 colors. Continuing on to 3-color mana bases, you're going to find that your fetch lands and untapped duels are still a priority, but your fetch lands are becoming less necessary. You're not going to need to run the max number anymore. 4 to 7 utility land spots is about what you'll be able to squeeze in. They're going to begin to improve your deck's power instead of hurting your mana. Ramping for basics becomes more feasible. You're going to be playing more basics, and you're going to need to find less types of basics. So here's our 3-color mana base outline. Common budget lands that you'll find. The tri-lands are still showing up. You only get to play 1 now. The scry lands are popular. I don't personally like them because I think putting in these 3 tap lands at once makes your deck a little too slow. The scry isn't necessarily worth it. Now, if you don't have all these types of lands, I wouldn't worry about it. You can really replace almost all of them with basics, and your deck's going to function just fine. Now we're on to the 2-color mana bases. Your priority here, you're just trying to jam as much technology and synergy into your mana base as possible, while also being able to cast your spells. Here's what the typical mana base looks like for a 2-color deck. You're going to have like 7 to 12 utility land slots, unless your commander requires otherwise. One example of this is Karmitra. You just want a bunch of forests and plains, but most commanders will allow you to squeeze a bunch of utility lands in the deck. Now we arrive at our last outline, the monocolored decks. Your priority, you're still trying to max out utility lands. Now you can play 10 plus, so really just go crazy with it. I wouldn't go too far above 12 colorless lands because you're going to want to cast your spells with 2/3 of your mana being colored. At this point, Command Tower and Rainbow lands become less and less valuable the fewer colors you play. So you'd rather just play basic lands at this point. Here's what your typical mana base is going to look like. A couple of lands we wanted to shout out real quick. Nykthos is an all-star in monocolored decks. For mono red and mono white, colors that struggle to draw cards, Miko Koro and Gyre Reach Sanitarium can help immensely with that. Valakut is a clock on a land that encourages basics, and Emiria will reanimate once a turn in your white decks. Alright, so those were our outlines of the various colors you can play in Commander. We find that using a mana base outline gives you a good starting point for your deck. Once you make that, you can get the more fun part of choosing the sweet spells for your deck. Now all you need to do after is slightly tweak your lands based on your color concentrations, and you've saved yourself a bunch of time. Thanks for watching. We hope this video was both helpful and enjoyable.